What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in this video I'm going to be going through some of the top sell-high trade targets heading into week 4 of the NFL season. So these are players coming off of boom weeks. I think maybe they're going to regress throughout the rest of the season, or they're just kind of at the point where they've reached their probably peak value. I think this is the best opportunity to flip them, get an upgrade either at the same position or a different position. I do just want to emphasize that just because I think these players are sell high players does not mean I don't think they're, startable for fantasy football or that they did something wrong. I've seen those comments in previous videos. Sometimes a player hasn't done anything wrong to be tradable, right? Everyone should be available. And if the market is going to overreact to a certain player's big game, you can take the opportunity even if they didn't necessarily wrong you or, fault you in your lineup. So just kind of putting that out there. I have my waiver wire target video up if you guys are interested. Some buy low players also in a video. If you have any fantasy questions, drop those down below. But let's get right into it. I'm going to start it off here by talking about Alexander Madison. Madison is someone that I've kind of been talking about pivoting off of pretty much since after week 1. And I think here after week 3, this is the perfect time to really just get out from under Alexander Madison. If you were just box score watching the Vikings-Chargers game, you'd probably feel like Madison had a nice bounce back, overall solid game, 20 carries, 93 yards, 5 receptions, 32 receiving yards, and those stats are nice, but this was not some sort of Alexander Madison masterclass. He dropped a few passes. He also kind of got bailed out on a goal line fumble where they ruled that his forward progress had stopped, but it seemed like everyone on the field believed that it was a legit fumble. So it's not like this was some sort of perfect game. There were still some clear kind of flaws with Alexander Madison that we had seen in both week 1 and week 2. Cam Akers also wasn't active for this game, so we didn't really get a real look at what that split would potentially be like. I'm guessing he's going to be active heading into week 4 once he's going to be in the building, for that full week. I just think this Vikings backfield is going to turn into a gross split. And this is not even me being super optimistic about Cam Akers. I'm probably lower on Cam Akers in consensus. Wasn't high on him heading into the season. After week 1, I was like, it looks like this is going to be Kyren Williams' backfield. I just don't think Alexander Madison is some sort of world beater that's going to, fend off all these other competition, whether that's Ty Chandler rest of season or Cam Akers. I think this is going to turn into a gross running back room. And so I would just be sending out offers for someone like the back end RB2s, guy like Rachaad White. Maybe that's going to be tough to get someone to bite on. I think Javonte Williams is someone really interesting in that range because Javonte hasn't had huge fantasy performances, but he's had a decent workload. The Broncos offense has looked competent. He's also someone that was just going to be a better option in the back half of the season coming off of the ACL. So I think someone in that Rachaad White, Javonte Williams range is the kind of players I'd be going after. You could also just throw shots on wide receiver 2s if you want to pivot off the running back position. I think Breece Hall also could be a potential target. Even with the gross quarterback situation now, if Zach Wilson continues to play at this level, there's no way they can rationalize not making a move. So I think long-term, Breece Hall is also solid. Same thing with Javonte, coming off the ACL. He'll be better on in the second half of the season. I just think that if you were someone who had Madison, you were worried after week 1, week 2, this is going to be your opportunity to kind of pivot here heading into week 4. Now the next sell-high player is going to be a wide receiver. It's going to be Courtland Sutton. And Sutton has had a very strong start to the season, averaging 14.6 PPR points per game through the first 3 games. He's coming off an 8 for 91 and a touchdown performance. Somehow lost 2 fumbles, which kind of capped his overall fantasy production, but still a very strong fantasy day. I just think when we look at this Broncos wide receiver room, personally, I view Jeudy as the better option moving forward. I was much higher on him heading into the season. He was the much better option last year in 2022. So I do favor Jeudy long term. So obviously that would hurt Courtland Sutton now that Jerry Jeudy's back. He had a strong week 3 after kind of a pedestrian week 2 in his season debut. So rest of the season, I'd take Jeudy over Sutton. I think some people at this point may not agree with that, which is why I think Courtland Sutton is a nice sell high. You also have a guy like Marvin Mims who's really flashed in a small sample size. He's someone who could kind of continue to build his workload, be more involved in this offense. I just think through 3 weeks, you can make the pitch that Courtland Sutton is this team's wide receiver 1. He's given you wide receiver 2 production. That is a pitch you can make. I don't know if you're going to be able to make that same pitch heading into week 6 or week 7, right? Jeudy starts to stack some solid games. Mims starts to improve his role. Like, is that case going to be as strong as it was, right now today after Courtland Sutton's 8 for 91 in a touchdown game? I don't think so. So like I said, I would take Jeudy straight up. I'd be looking at guys like Jordan Addison, DeAndre Hopkins coming off of 2 down games. I think he's more interesting than Sutton, just as like the locked in wide receiver 1. Addison, coming off of not a great game, but still someone I'm very interested in here, especially someone who could peak later on in the season. Or you could throw Courtland Sutton in like some sort of 2-for-1 deal, whether that's getting a higher end wide receiver 1, higher end running back 1. But I do think he's someone I would consider moving on. If you're a big Sutton guy, that's fair. You can hold on to him. I just think that if you do think Jeudy's the better option, this is the peak time to sell. And then the final sell high player is going to be another wide receiver, another veteran. It's going to be Adam Thielen. I think this is a great opportunity to flip Thielen for like a more confident wide receiver 3, maybe even getting into like the fringe wide receiver 2 territory. He's coming off of a monster week 3, 14 targets, 11 receptions, 145 receiving yards, and a touchdown. This was really just like a perfect storm for a big Adam Thielen day. The Panthers were trailing to the Seahawks for most of this game, which led Andy Dalton to have a crazy amount of passing volume, 58 pass attempts. Also just a very soft matchup against the Seahawks. And then we also saw Jonathan Mingo leave early on with a concussion. He's one of their locked-in top 3 wide receivers. He's out of the picture, so everything lined up really nicely for Adam Thielen. And DJ Chark, who also had a very solid fantasy day. I just don't think this game is very indicative of what we're going to see in the future. I think the Panthers are going to fall back to being a pretty low volume passing attack. I don't think they're going to be a top offense. I think they're going to lack touchdown upside throughout the rest of the season. I mean, we saw with Bryce Young at quarterback, all these wide receivers really struggled to separate. So I'm just not super confident in this Panthers offense moving forward. So I just have a list of guys that I'd be throwing out offers for. Like I said at the top, you're not forced to trade him. I just think if you can get a better option, I'd go for it. So guys like Marquise Brown, Jordan Addison, Jerry Jeudy, Jacoby Myers, D-Hop, Nico Collins, some of those guys are coming off of down games. Those would just be some 1-for-1s I'd be firing off. Adam Thielen, obviously, just like Courtland Sutton, could be kind of used as a add-in piece to a trade if you want to get a big upgrade. But those are going to be my 3 sell-high players. So it's Alexander Madison, Courtland Sutton, and Adam Thielen. It was kind of an interesting week for sell highs because we did have some huge performances, but a lot of them were just from stud players like Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. Don't see a need to sell high there. We also had some big games from players who are probably on waivers or could be on waivers like a Tank Dell or a Devon Achane. So these were some kind of mid-level options I thought you could kind of flip at this point in the season. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Waiver wire video, buy low video up on my channel if you are interested. Drop your comments down below. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.